Welcome to this deep dive. Um, if you are joining us today, you're probably that person who just loves to learn.
Yeah, the one who's, always asking questions.
Exactly. You're trying to figure out how things work and you're always looking for that next big aha moment. Well, you are in the exact right place.
Because this deep dive was custom tailored just for you.
It really was. So our mission today is to explore a truly fascinating document. It's titled Equipping the Saints for the Work.pdf.
It's a great read.
It really is. And the core question we are trying to figure out today is this. How do you transform dormant potential into explosive, active engagement?
Which is the holy grail for basically any organization.
Right. Now, to be clear right up front, our source material today is entirely focused on church communities and Christian theology.
Yeah, we're looking at specific frameworks and historical examples laid out in that text.
Right. But as we read through this, we realize that the core insights about shifting an organization from a performance model to an empowerment model are just absolutely universal.
Oh, completely. Whether you're leading a corporate team, running a small business, or just trying to mobilize your local community group.
Yeah, the principles we're about to explore are going to give you these massive paradigm-shifting insights into human behavior and leadership.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's unpack this. Our source text identifies a massive issue in modern congregations, something it explicitly calls passive Christianity.
Passive Christianity. It's a powerful phrase.
It is. The argument here is that the modern church has accidentally become a spectator sport.
Yeah.
You have full rooms, but basically nobody is playing the game.
It is a striking paradox when you really look at the mechanics of it. The text points out that you can have these incredibly full sanctuaries.
Right, standing remotely.
Exactly. Remarkably high attendance on Sunday mornings, perfectly efficient programs running like a Swiss watch. And yet, underneath all of that visible success, there's this quiet crisis.
A crisis of engagement.
Yes. The vast majority of the people in the room are essentially just functioning as an audience. They're consuming the content, but their potential is completely dormant.
They aren't actively participating in the core mission of the organization at all.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And to understand why this happened, the author takes us back to a historical phenomenon known as clericalism.
So, if modern megachurches are operating this way, where did this actually start? Did the early decentralized movement of the first century just naturally evolve into this spectator model over time?
Well,
Or was there a specific historical shift that caused people to just, sit back and watch?
the document traces this back to a gradual drift that really solidified in the Middle Ages.
Middle Ages.
Yeah. In the very early days, the movement was highly decentralized. It happened in homes, in marketplaces.
Right. Very grassroots.
Very grassroots.
Yeah.
But as the centuries went on, ministry became highly professionalized. It drifted into this model of clericalism where the work of the church was concentrated almost entirely in the hands of a few trained professionals.
The priests and the clergy.
Exactly. Think of a medieval cathedral. You have the priest up front, often speaking in a language the common people didn't even understand, performing the rituals.
Oh, wow. Yeah, like Latin.
Right. And the everyday believers, the laity, were relegated to just observing. What is so interesting is that the text argues the modern megachurch often unintentionally mirrors this exact medieval dynamic.
That is wild to think about. You swap out the medieval robes and the Latin for smoke machines, massive LED screens, and a charismatic speaker.
And the core dynamic is identical.
The architecture of the experience is the exact same.
It is. By prioritizing high production value, celebrity-style leadership, and maximizing seating capacity, they inadvertently reinforce a consumer culture.
Wow.
The congregation is implicitly trained by the environment to ask, what am I receiving today? Or, was the music good today?
Instead of asking, how am I being equipped to serve the community?
Precisely. The professionals do all the heavy lifting and everyone else just rates the performance.
I want you, the listener, to really think about this for a second, because this isn't just a church problem. Think about the secular organizations or businesses you are a part of.
Oh, it applies everywhere.
Do they measure their success by attendance? In other words, are they just counting how many people show up to the all-hands meeting?
Or how many employees log into the mandatory webinar.
Right. Or do they measure success by activation, tracking how many people are actually mobilized, empowered, and trusted to do the work themselves?
Because if you're only measuring attendance, you might be cultivating a passive audience.
When you actually desperately need an active workforce. Here's where it gets really interesting, though. The source material doesn't just point out the problem.
No, it offers a way out.
Yeah, it provides an ancient blueprint for a solution. It points to a text from the Apostle Paul in the book of Ephesians, specifically chapter 4.
Yes, a very famous passage.
I saw this mentioned in our notes, something about fivefold gifts. I'm familiar with corporate hierarchies and org charts, but how does this specific ancient text map out leadership?
Well, this is the apostolic blueprint the author builds their entire argument upon. The text in Ephesians lists these fivefold gifts that were given to the church:
What are they?
apostles, prophets, evangelists, shepherds or pastors, and teachers.
Okay.
Now, in a modern corporate mindset, we would look at those titles and think, okay, those are the executives.
Right, those are the people who do all the high-level work, the
Right.
heavy hitters.
Exactly. But the text explicitly defines their job description differently. Their primary purpose isn't to do all the ministry themselves. Their job is to equip the saints for the work of ministry.
So the leaders aren't supposed to be the performers on the stage.
No, they are supposed to be the equippers behind the scenes.
So their entire job is to work themselves out of a job, essentially. They're supposed to be enabling everyone else.
If you happen to be watching the video feed of this deep dive, you'll see my backdrop has just shifted to an ancient Greek manuscript inside a historical library.
Oh, nice touch.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I want us to zero in on the original Greek word used in that Ephesian text for the word equip.
Okay, what is it?
The word is katartismos.
Katartismos.
What's fascinating here is the rich, vivid imagery behind this specific word. In the ancient world, katartismos wasn't just a corporate buzzword for onboarding or training.
Like sitting in a seminar.
Right. It was actually used in medical contexts to describe the agonizing process of setting a broken bone so it could heal and function properly.
Oh, wow. That is visceral.
It is. And it was also used in fishing contexts to describe the meticulous mending of torn nets so they could actually hold a catch.
It's funny, most modern leadership books make the leader out to be the rock star, catching all the fish, taking all the credit.
Yeah, holding up the massive trophy fish.
Exactly. But this ancient Greek word basically says the leader's job is to sit on the dock, untangle the knots, and patch the hole so everyone else can go out and do the fishing.
That is a massive blow to the ego of a micromanaging boss.
It really is. It requires a total surrender of ego.
It means that leadership, in this biblical framework, is essentially a restorative act. You aren't just giving people a list of KPIs and walking away.
You're actually getting in the mess with them.
As a leader, you are a spiritual aligner. You are stepping in to mend fractured confidence, to restore broken people, and to align them so they can function exactly as they were designed to.
You are mending the nets so the organization can actually bring in the catch.
Yes. And the text provides historical proof that whenever leadership embraces this katartismos model, movements absolutely explode.
The examples the text gives really bring this to life. They point straight to the Protestant Reformation.
A prime example.
Martin Luther championed this concept called the priesthood of all believers.
Which was revolutionary.
He essentially looked at that medieval clericalism we just talked about, where the priests had all the power and pushed back hard.
Very hard.
He insisted that every single baptized believer had a calling and a mandate to minister. It wasn't just for the elites in the robes.
He democratized the mission entirely. And then the text moves forward in history to John Wesley during the Methodist revival.
Wesley was a brilliant organizer, right?
Incredible organizer. He didn't just preach to massive crowds and go home. He actively mobilized lay preachers, everyday ordinary people, and appointed them as class leaders.
He decentralized the power structure.
Because he did that, ordinary tradesmen and farmers carried the message across entire towns and villages where a professional clergy member could never have reached.
Okay, so we have this beautiful historical model of decentralization and empowerment. But taking that concept and scaling it to an organization of 300 or 3,000 people sounds like a logistical nightmare.
It's definitely a challenge.
Making that shift from a centralized, performance-based model to a distributed empowerment model is incredibly difficult.
It is.
The text points out a cognitive trap that I think all of us fall into, whether we are in a church or a boardroom. We assume that if we just give people enough information, they will automatically change their behavior.
Right. We treat humans like hard drives. We think we just need to upload the data.
Yes. But as the text brilliantly puts it, information fills notebooks, but training builds muscle memory.
That's a great line.
The author explicitly states that many organizations today are information-rich but mission-poor. Knowing is not doing.
Exactly. Knowing is not doing.
You can listen to 100 sermons or read a dozen leadership books or sit through weeks of corporate onboarding.
But if you aren't actually practicing the skills, your potential stays completely dormant.
That distinction between information and training is the hinge point of the whole document. Information answers the question, what should I know?
While training answers the question, what should I do? And how do I actually do it when the pressure is on?
So how do we bridge that gap?
To bridge that gap, the source material points to the pedagogy of the kingdom, specifically how Jesus ran his own apprenticeship model.
An apprenticeship model.
Yes, look at the historical accounts.
Yeah.
He didn't just stand in the classroom and lecture the 12 apostles or the 72 with a chalkboard.
He immersed them in the work.
Exactly.
It was walking in the dirt, life-on-life mentorship. But how does the text actually break down that pedagogy? How did that apprenticeship function step by step?
The text outlines a very specific 5-step cycle required to build what they call spiritual reflexes.
Okay, what's step one?
Step 1 is modeling. The leader has to demonstrate the action first. They show what it looks like in messy reality, not just in theory.
So, watch me do this. That makes
Yeah.
sense? What's next?
Step 2 is practice. This is where the learner is immersed in real-world contexts. They have to actually try to do the work themselves.
So they stumble, they stutter, they try it out.
Exactly, they get their hands dirty. Step 3 is feedback and debriefing.
Which is usually the scary part for most people.
It is, but in this model, it's a safe environment. The leader steps back in to offer constructive correction and encouragement, helping the learner process what just happened.
So they ask things like, what went well? Where did you get stuck?
Precisely. Which leads to step 4, repetition. You can't just do it once and claim you are trained.
Right.
You have to solidify the habits by doing it over and over until it becomes true muscle memory.
And the final step.
Finally, step 5 is commissioning. This is where the leader officially sends the learner out with the authority and the trust to do the work independently.
And eventually to start modeling it for someone else, starting the cycle over.
You've got it. That's the multiplication factor.
So what does this all mean? How do we actually put this into practice?
Good question.
We have this 5-step apprenticeship cycle, but how do we apply it to an entire community so everyone is on the same page?
Well, our source text provides a highly practical system for this called the Gospel Fluency Training Framework.
I love the term fluency here.
Yeah, it's very intentional. Think about learning a language. The goal isn't rote memorization. You don't want people just robotically reciting a script out of a phrase book.
The goal is for people to learn to speak about their faith and interpret all of life as naturally as if they were speaking a native language.
Exactly. To achieve that level of fluency, the framework teaches believers to view and interpret the entire world through a specific narrative lens.
A narrative lens.
Yes, they break this down into the 4 acts of God's story. Let's walk through them. Act 1 is creation.
Creation.
This focuses heavily on God's intentionality, the inherent dignity of every single human being as an image bearer, and humanity's original purpose.
So that establishes a baseline of immense value for every person you interact with.
Exactly the point. It sets the tone for the relationship. Act 2 is the fall. This is where the framework acknowledges human brokenness, separation, and God's justice. The text emphasizes that empathy is absolutely key here.
Wait, let's pause on the fall for a second. The text says empathy is key here. In a normal corporate setting, we usually just call out mistakes and implement PIPs.
Performance improvement plan.
Right. We treat failure as a metric to be punished. But this framework uses the fall to say, hey, we are all broken. We all fall short.
It's a profound shift.
That's a totally different starting point for a conversation.
Yeah.
It levels the playing field completely.
It removes the condescension from the interaction entirely. You aren't speaking down to someone. You are standing beside them in the mess.
That's powerful. What's Act 3?
Act 3 is redemption. This puts Christ at the absolute center of the narrative, illustrating the exact point where God's love and mercy meet his justice to provide a way out of that brokenness.
It's the pivot point of the whole story.
It is. And finally, Act 4 is restoration. This is the ultimate hope of a renewed creation and an eternal kingdom.
So when someone is truly fluent in these 4 acts, they don't just quote isolated verses at people like a robot.
No, they can naturally guide a conversation from a colleague's sense of purposelessness, which relates to creation, through their struggles, which relates to the fall, and point them toward hope and ultimate renewal.
And what makes that framework so brilliant is how the text applies it to the individual. In my notes, I pulled out this highly practical rule the author provides for crafting a 3-minute personal testimony using this exact narrative flow.
It's a great tool.
It's incredibly simple. Part 1, your life before the encounter. What was your struggle or your brokenness? Part 2, the encounter with God. How did that intervention actually happen?
The redemption piece.
Right. And part 3, your life after the encounter. What does your ongoing transformation and hope look like today?
The restoration.
Yes. It takes this massive, cosmic 4-act story and shrinks it down into a deeply personal 3-minute narrative that anyone can relate to at a coffee shop or a bus stop.
But of course, going back to the pedagogy of the kingdom, you can't just hand someone that 3-minute outline, pat them on the back, and expect them to be fluent.
Right. They have to practice it out loud.
And this brings us to the actual mechanics of how this training is delivered. The text places a massive emphasis on a structure it calls coaching triads.
I found this part fascinating. Why specifically groups of 3? Why not pairs or groups of 10?
The psychology behind the number 3 here is brilliant. If you have just 2 people, it can feel like an intense interrogation.
So much pressure.
Exactly. If you have 10 people, the introverts hide. A triad provides intimacy, so people feel safe being vulnerable. But it also provides a balanced perspective so that no single voice completely dominates the conversation.
That makes perfect sense.
Plus, 2 people can give feedback to the one who is practicing. Most importantly, triads are highly reproducible. It is much easier to coordinate the schedules of 3 people than it is to organize massive weekly training seminars.
Inside these triads, the members engage in what the text calls role-play evangelism. They simulate real-life scenarios.
Like talking to a skeptical coworker.
Right. This makes so much sense even outside of a church context. If you send an employee to a 500-person seminar on sales tactics, they're going to hide in the back row, play on their phone, and learn nothing.
Every single time.
But if you put them in a group of 3 and say, okay, role-play this client pitch right now, there is nowhere to hide. They have to build the muscle memory.
And the text notes that in these triads, mistakes are treated as diagnostic learning tools, not as failures.
It is a completely safe laboratory for relational engagement.
You want them to stumble in the triad, not in the real world.
Yeah.
That is where the catechismos happens, the mending and aligning.
Which perfectly sets up the culmination of this entire deep dive, the case study. Our source material shares this incredible real-world example to prove this isn't just theory.
A fantastic case study.
They profile a mid-sized, plateaued urban church. They had about 300 members, and they had been stuck at that exact number for 5 years.
Imagine the board meetings. Imagine the frustration of the leadership team.
Seriously, they had great programs, they had high attendance on Sundays, but their culture was totally stagnant.
They hit a wall.
The leadership finally had this painful realization that they had been doing ministry for the people instead of through the people.
They were treating their congregation like an audience.
So they made a brave decision to completely change their metrics.
They had to stop caring about how many people were in the seats.
Which is terrifying for a leader. But they launched a 12-week gospel fluency cohort using these exact coaching triads.
They focused on practice, role play, and life-on-life mentorship.
I can only imagine the initial friction. People who are used to just showing up and listening suddenly being asked to role play and practice out loud.
Oh, it must have been incredibly awkward for the first few weeks. It is always awkward to shift from an information delivery model to an experiential equipping model.
People resist the vulnerability of practice.
Always. But once they push through that friction, the empowerment takes over.
And the empowerment absolutely took over in this case study. The results they achieved within just 2 years are staggering.
Now, were the numbers?
The text notes that over 70% of their active members were confidently sharing the gospel in their daily lives.
Wow. Think about that mobilization.
Their baptisms doubled. Their small groups multiplied organically because the people in the original triads were now trained, confident, and empowered to go start their own triads.
The entire culture of the organization completely shifted.
They transformed from a room full of passive spectators into an activated, confident, and mobilized workforce.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it perfectly validates the core thesis of the entire document. True leadership is not about building a massive platform for yourself.
Right.
It is not about performing flawlessly for a passive audience. And it is certainly not about hoarding authority because you think you can do it better than everyone else.
So true.
True leadership is fundamentally about empowerment. It is about stewardship. It is about having the immense humility to step back, sit on the dock, and mend the nets so you can multiply capacity in the people around you.
When a leader views themselves as an equipper, the dormant potential of the entire community is finally unlocked.
Beautifully said.
That is the ultimate takeaway for you today. Whether you are analyzing a church structure, evaluating a corporate business hierarchy, or looking at a local community group you volunteer with, the ultimate measure of organizational success isn't how many people you can get together in a room to listen to you speak.
Not at all.
The true measure of success is how many people you have equipped, activated, and sent out to do the work. It is a total paradigm shift from consuming to contributing.
A necessary shift.
As we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with a final thought to mull over independently. Drawing on that beautiful ancient imagery we discussed earlier.
The katartismos.
Yes! If true leadership is really about katartismos, if it is about mending nets to prepare for a massive catch, what torn nets in your own life or in the organizations you belong to are currently preventing you from fully participating in your core mission?
Think about what it would take to mend them.
And who you need to empower to get it done. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
It has been a pleasure. Thank you for listening.